Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Southern Dirt. My name is Summer and today we are preparing our garden for multiple days of freeze warning for our Zone 9 garden. I will be showing you what we're doing to our food forest to protect our fruit trees and what we're doing in the garden. So hopefully you'll find some tips and tricks that you haven't seen before. If you did like this video, make sure you subscribe and share it with your friends, and we'll get right into the video. So the first thing I'm going to do is set my watering system and set my timer to 4 a.m. That's going to be the coldest point of the night for us. So that will at least create a warmth for our roots and our plants. So even if you don't have covers, even if you don't have anything, or you have such a big garden and food forest, starting your timer for an hour or 2 or 3 or whatever you need to do, that will definitely help warm up your plants. So right now is the middle of the day. I've kind of prepped some things to show you guys. Definitely the number one thing you want to do after the freeze has passed is you want to uncover your plants. So don't try to cover your plants in the middle of the day. What you want to do is wait for the warmth of the sun to pass by and then start covering your plants, because what you will do is you will actually capture the warmth and heat from the ground inside your little tent systems. So I'm going to show you some of the things, random things that over the 8 years that I have been gardening, I have come across when I've run out of sheets and run out of stakes, that you just kind of use what works. So we have a bunch of these old milk crates hanging around our house. So if we have smaller plants, that's something that can easily go over the plant. Then we can put a cover over it. We have tons of these sitting around our house, just little old plant pots. But if they have holes, you definitely want to put a blanket or sheet over top of them. I have messed up and just put them over in these holes. The air's come through and woke up to dead plants. You can also use a box, just a wooden box. I'm sure a lot of you guys are getting these right now around Christmas time. Don't throw them away. You can put this over your plants. This actually will work without even a sheet over it. So I'm going to show you how I use all this in the garden as well. Put any kind of stake. These are actually camping, little camp tent stakes that someone was throwing away, and I'm like, wait a second, I can build these and make stakes out of them. So we've actually been using them to stake off our plants, and they work really well when you need to cover. These are really cheap little trellises you can get at the dollar store. We have those hanging around, so that's something else we can use to drape and stake. You definitely don't want, the reason we stake and just don't throw a blanket over your plants is if that blanket is touching the actual plant and leaves, it can burn those leaves. It can actually kill the plant if the frost or freeze is pretty rough. So you always want to keep your leaves away from your tenting system. So I'll show you how I've built different systems, and you can find out what works for you. If there's something you have used or found in your yard that has worked really well, please put it in the comments below, because there's definitely things that I have not thought about. You can use old chairs or stools to put over your plant and then drape your blanket over it. I have all kinds of old drop cloths we've used for painting projects, and old towels that just got dingy, and all kinds of blankets that we just store in our garage. I'm also going to show you one of the easiest ways I've found to protect our plants, and I'll show you here in a little bit. That's a wonderful frost cloth there. You can use tarps and bisqueen. Another thing you want to be prepared with is some kind of twine that you can help tuck your plants in. Especially, I'll show you some of my tomato plants are all real big and crazy. I've just kind of bundled them in tighter to then allow, less space for our blanket to cover. So we'll have less damage of our leaves. Any kind of string, and you definitely want some kind of clips. I've got just cheap clips here, and these you can get at the dollar store. You want to have some scissors, and I'm going to show you here what we're doing. So another thing you can use as a cover is an old milk jug. Just cut the bottom off of it if you have small plants and place it over top of your plant. Again, you want to make sure as soon as the sun comes out and you're clear of the freeze conditions, you want to go ahead and take it off, because too much heat with your covers on can actually kill your plants. So you want to remove that right away. Another thing that you may have not thought of is keeping your bubble wrap type of mailers. The bigger ones work better than the smaller ones, especially if you have larger plants, but all you got to do is just kind of place that over your plants. It can help warm them up. Another thing that you can use are Christmas lights to add a little bit extra warmth to your garden. You could actually use it as a tinting system, but definitely make sure to take safety precautions on how you're doing that. And we like to use LED lights, but that will definitely add a few more degrees of warmth in the garden. We have a ton of mulch on our ground, on our garden, so that should be a huge help too. So if you have some tender plants, you need to put some extra mulch under there if you don't already have mulch. So over here in our Vago garden beds, I have just gotten some bamboo sticks. These are very cheap at the store. We actually have bamboo trees, so we're able to harvest them when we need them. So what I've done is just created a little tent system, and I have all kinds of plants that have been like towering over, like these. African basil. What I've done is just kind of wrap them in and tuck them in here so they're not going to be touching the sheets. So you don't want any of your plants touching the sheets. I've got some beans in here. A lot of this in here is frost sensitive, so we wanted to cover that. I also have brought in some plants I'll show you here in the back. I've also brought in some succulents and some potted plants that I don't want to drag inside. We can just kind of place them under this tenting system. So I've used 2 sheets on this particular area, and I've just pinned the top to make sure if it's windy that my sheets aren't going everywhere. When I'm ready to cover completely, all I'm going to do is bring this together and make sure there's no holes, and I'm just going to pin these together. I've actually used paper clips in the past when I ran out of clips. So whatever you can do to make those stay together. You can also go the extra mile and put bricks on the edge here. So if the wind is really bad, you can make sure that they stay and they're not flopping in the wind. So over here is my GreenStalk garden, and absolutely 100% is so over here is our GreenStalk garden. They make a beautiful 5-year warranty frost cover, and I have several of them, and I wish I had them for every plant in the garden because they work so well. They're so easy to store and they're so easy to put on. I mean, I literally can send my kids out here and say, hey, go cover these plants. All they have to do is throw them over the top and zip them up. This creates 8 degrees of warmth and it allows light to come through. So if you guys have several days of cold weather, this allows you to keep them on and allow them to continue to grow. So I love that about them. But of course, again, if it's going to be hot and you're safe from the freeze, you definitely want to take these off, because being too hot under your cloths can also kill your plants. Over here, I'm not actually covering this entire bed because I have some frost hardy plants like cabbage and kale and collards, but I do want to save these tomato plants. As you can see, I have all kinds of beautiful tomatoes on them. Another thing you want to do, if you have ripened food on your plants, go ahead and remove them, because you never know how cold it might get beyond what the forecast is. Usually it's 3 to 4 degrees colder than what the forecast says in my area. So I'd rather be safe than sorry. These green tomatoes, I did harvest some of them. I harvested my bigger ones, but we're going to leave most of them on because I do want them to ripen on the vine. You can see that earlier these plants were towering. So what I've done is I've just easily bent them over and kind of bundled them in so I don't have leaves coming over the top and out the sides. This way I can put my sheet over the top and the sheets are going to stay away from my leaves. Can tuck these in like that. So I haven't actually tied the top of these because I need them to be taller. So that is another way I am protecting these plants. I've brought some of my succulents under here. Usually I just throw a sheet over my succulent stand here, but I need extra sheets this year. So we're gonna try to utilize all the space underneath our systems. So over here I have some tomato plants that you definitely want to cover if there is a freeze or a frost advisory in your area. I also am going to put all of your frost tolerant, frost hardy plants in the description below. If there's something I left out, make sure you comment down below as well so I can add that to my list. I'm trying to do this as fast as I can on the fly, but here's our GreenStalk garden cover that can actually work on fruit trees or plants in your garden. So this will be so easy to cover. I put another tomato cage just to kind of bring it up to keep it off the leaves. I've tucked these plants in as well, and all I'm going to do is zip this up after our sun has gone down so we can trap that heat in to help keep it warm in there. So over here, as you can see, I've got some tomato cages staged. So this is actually going to be a nice easy tent for me this year. I just happen to have extra ones laying around and I've just flipped them upside down. So I'm just going to drape a sheet over both of these to help save my onion tops. Usually root vegetables do pretty decent whenever you have a freeze. It just really depends on how long that freeze is going to stay in effect. We're only going to have a couple hours, if that, so I just don't want all my tops of my onions to get burnt. I am not concerned about things like kale or collards because frost can make your kale and collards taste better. So we're gonna let them just soak up as many ice crystals as they'd like, and we're gonna have much better tasting kale and collards after this frost. My squash and zucchini are pretty much done, so I'm not even gonna worry about covering those. Our carrots should be fine. Our cabbage should be fine. Sometimes I get a little burn on the cabbage and a burn on top of our tops of our carrots, but our actual root vegetable should be fine. Over here, I have created a tenting system with these bamboo plants. Beans are will definitely freeze back. So those are something I'm not ready to lose yet because we're getting tons of flowers and tons of food on them right now. So we will be covering those. So over here I have took all my succulent plants off this shelf, put them underneath here, and any plants that were potted in the garden, and we just kind of huddled them closer to this wall. This wall should provide some warmth, but we're actually going to put a sheet on top of here, and we're just going to put little rocks to hold our sheet down and then drape it off on the side. Again, you do not want any of the sheet touching your plants because it will damage it. So find things like watering cans, buckets, or anything that can help keep that sheet from laying on your plants. Right here I've got a stake here to help keep it off of our plants. So another thing we can do is find something like a potting table and put our plants underneath the potting table and then put a cover on top of it. We've done that over the years with some of these potting tables over here, but right now we don't have a lot of smaller plants except for these, and we're just going to kind of sheet this area. So over here in our herb area, okay, stop. So since I've started using the GreenStalk gardens and I know how easy it is to cover them with our frost cloth, what I have started to do is put more plants that are frost tender into the GreenStalk. So here's a strawberry tower, which all this needs to definitely be covered. So we'll be easily just throwing over our GreenStalk frost cover, and those will be protected. Over in my other GreenStalk, I have things like peppers and eggplants and herbs. I have some salads that will get frostbite as well. So thankfully, all I've got to do is just throw the frost cover on. It's going to give me 8 degrees of protection. Also, if we were to have continuous cold, I can actually leave the frost covers on. I don't have to worry about my plants not getting sun because those frost covers allows light to come into them. So another thing you can do is place a little fire pit in the middle of your garden. We'll be actually taking this fire pit down here, and allowing it to kind of create an atmosphere to keep that area warmer than usual. So that's something else you can do. Definitely you want to keep it far enough away from your plants so that heat isn't actually hurting your plants. We're just going to actually be placing it this way, and our wind direction actually is just going that way, so we should be safe with having that down there. So our kids' garden has a lot of different things that are definitely frost tender that could freeze back. But what we're going to do is run the irrigation. This area has overhead irrigation. So what it's going to do is kind of keep the plants insulated to not allow that frost to sit on the leaves. So we should be fine with most of the things in their garden. The rest of the garden is on drip. So when that irrigation comes on, it's just going to stay in the ground, and it's just going to radiate that warmth up through that area. Another thing you can do is take cuttings from plants that you know will not survive the freeze, especially if you're not able to cover. So I've got a few tomato plant cuttings that I can easily root. I also got some different things from our garden that we're going to easily root if they die back. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope something in it you found helpful. If you did, please share it with your friends. We are almost to 10,000 subscribers, which would be a huge milestone. So if you can share it with your friends, subscribe, that would be awesome little Christmas present for me and my channel. I love putting out content for you guys, and we'll be putting out a garden tour for December after Christmas. So at that point, we'll be able to show you what has survived, what I covered, what I didn't cover, and how well my covering systems did. And everybody stay safe, and we'll see you next time. My GreenStalk garden is all tucked in for the freeze.